What's up everybody, welcome back to the Mixamo retargeting tutorial. So in the last episode we set up our new weapon Anim's data tables, and before we actually set them up in our character, there are two small things we need to take a look at. So if we open up one of the weapon animation tables, in the previous episode I accidentally named the rifle while it was named AR in the previous series. So to make sure everything matches up, you need to rename this back to AR. And do the same thing in the data table for Quinn, to make sure that the weapons actually work. So you can double check by opening the old weapon info table, and it should match that name in there to make your life a little bit easier. So that's done, and then for the retargeting of the animations, I actually forgot to set the root motion options for the turn in place and dashing. So if we go to our Eli animation folder and we look for the dash animations, then we want to grab these four animation sequences, right click, go to asset actions and then bulk edit via property matrix. And for the root motion, we want to enable force root lock. So just this one for the dash animations. And then we can close it down and look for the turn in place animations. And for all of these animation sequences, again, you want to select them all. So that should be 6 of them. And then again, we're going to bulk edit via property matrix. So we want to adjust the root motion settings, and for these ones we need to enable both of the tick boxes, so enable root motion and force root lock. So those are just the settings that were in the original Quinn animations, and we forgot to set them over here. So that's fixed up and ready to go. So now we can actually set up the new weapon animation table. So let's open up our BP hero base character. And we need to go to our event graph to the set weapon cosmetics event. So let me clean this up a little bit. So that's all the way down here somewhere. That's one of the last things we did. And in here you can see all of the animations that are now inside of our new data table. So we need to make sure that we grab them from the new data table. So let's make a little bit of room over here. There's a few things we need to keep from the weapon info table. That's the display name, the fire sound, the muzzle flash FX, and the sockets over here. And all of the other stuff we're gonna pull from the new data table. So we're gonna keep the fire sound over here. And then we can disconnect this stuff and go all the way down here. So we need to keep the sockets at the original data table, so we could move those back up over here. And then we also want the muzzle flash, so that should be in here somewhere. So I'm gonna disconnect that one as well and pull it up to the other ones. So now all of this stuff over here should come from our new data table. So let's clean this part up first. So we have the weapon mesh, set skeletal mesh, or set skinned asset and update, as it's called in 5.1. So we need to reconnect this part. We have the fire sound over here, the muzzle flash FX, and then the two sockets. So make sure you also connect these ones back up. There we go. And now we need to get our new data table. So let's pull off here and let's get a table row name, or table row. And in this case, we need to plug in our weapon row name, not the character row name. So we can just grab that from the set weapon cosmetics function and simply plug it in here. And for the data table, we're actually gonna use a variable. So you could just drag off here and then promote to variable. So this is going to be our data table weapon animations. And now there's only one issue. The out row over here is a wildcard and it's not the weapon anims structure. So if we drag off here and we type break weapon anims, so for me it's actually in here. The first time I did this right after creating the struct, it didn't pop up. So if it doesn't show up for you, you want to disconnect the variable and then simply select the data table in here. So then it will give you the correct structure that you can break. And then you simply want to clear the variable over here again, plug in the new getter that we created, and then you can hook up the wildcard to the weapon anim structure. So just in case that happens, that's a way to work around it. And now it's simply a matter of moving everything over. So the weapon mesh, we already did that one over here. So we can just keep that one in here. That's not a biggie. And then we want to move over all the other pins. So I'm simply going to grab the weapon fire animation, plug it in here, the reload animation. So simply make sure you move everything over to the correct pin. Character fire, character reload, character ADS, character hip idle, and then the aim offsets for ADS and for hip. Then we have the muzzle flash FX, so we want to leave that where it is. And then over here we got the melee montage. And there's a new one in here actually, and that's the grenade montage. So we're going to create a variable for that one. So we could move to the melee montage part over here and then simply copy and paste the async load asset. So connect it to the upper pin over here. Make sure you connect the asset to the data table. And then we can promote this animation montage to a new variable. So let's make a bit of room over here. And we're going to promote this to a new variable, and that's the grenade throw montage. And make sure we hook it up to the completed pin. And then we're going to grab the upper pin over here and connect it back up to the HUD settings to make sure those still execute. And now we should be good to go over here. So let's make sure we have everything connected, and especially over here. So we want to grab the row found pin and plug it into the async load asset again. So after the sockets, it's going to grab the table row and then load all of the other assets. So this should be good to go. And now there are a few things we need to take a look at. First, let's set up the grenade montage, so the new variable we just created, and we need to plug it into our grenade montage event. So let's look for grenade montage over here. Nope, I can't type. And then we should have an event somewhere. So that's over here. It's actually called grenade montage. And for this one, we simply plugged in the animation without creating a variable. So we want to plug in our grenade montage variable, and that's good to go. Then we need to make sure that all of our characters actually load their correct data table. And we could add the data table as a variable to the character info structure, for example. So then you could simply specify which data table belongs to which character. In this case, there's only 2 characters, and it's pretty easy to set up in the construction script. So I'm just going to set it in the construction script for each of the child blueprints. So let's open up Eli first. And then over here, before we execute the parent construction script, I'm simply going to grab a new setter for the data table variable that we created. So I'm going to say set data table weapon anims. And in here, we can simply select the correct data table. So this is Eli. So we want to set the weapon anims Eli. And that's good to go. Plug it in over here. So I'm going to copy this node, compile and save. And then we also want to set up the 4 twin characters. So I'm going to open all 4 of them. And then in the construction script, simply paste the setter for the new variable and make sure you select the correct data tables. So in this case, that's the weapon animation twin. So I'm going to copy this one so I don't have to change the variable every time, and simply paste it in each of the child blueprints. And that should make everything work again. Oh, really? And the last one over here. So that's our new data table setup. Let's make sure those are all compiled. There we go. And let's save everything. So that's done. Now we need to take a look at our menu controller. So let's go to framework and then open up our menu player controller over here, BP menu controller. And in here are two functions that also use our weapon info table, and they actually use the idle animation in here. So we need to make sure that we replace this with the new weapon animations table that we created. So as you can see, we have the update loadout character. We're going to get to that in a little bit, but first we're going to tackle the enter loadout menu. So this event, and over here we're using the weapon info table to grab the hip idle, and we want to make sure that we grab it from our new data table. So we're going to run into a small problem because in here we don't know which data table belongs to which character. So again, you could add them to the original data table for the character info, but that means that you will need to actually get the data table in here, get the row from it, and then pull the variable from there. So it's a little bit easier in this case to just create a simple function. Depending on how many characters you're gonna add, you might want to add it to the data table if you're gonna add a lot of different characters. So I'm just gonna create a new function and call this getWeaponAnims table. And we're gonna give it an input, and that's the character row name. So character row name, and that's a name variable. And then we also want to give it an output, and that's our weapon anims table. And that's a data table. So we can simply select it over here, data table object reference. So I'm going to make a little bit of room in here and then simply grab a switch on name. So drag off the name and you can type switch. Really? Okay. So SW, and then you can switch on name. And in here we can add the character row names by hand. So I'm simply going to add 5 options in here, and on the right side set everything up. So the first one is Quinn Blue. And then we have Quinn Green. And then Quinn, I don't know the order, but it doesn't really matter. I think the next one is gray. And then we have Quinn Red. As long as all of them are in there, that's fine. And the last one is Eli. And then I'm gonna drag off here and promote this to a local variable. So that's my local data table. And we can simply set that over here after switch. So drag it in. For Quinn, we can connect all 4 of them to the same setter. And then select the weapon anims Quinn. And for Eli, grab the other one. So weapon anims Eli, and then return. So that's good to go. Now we can go back to the event graph, to our enter loadout menu. So the first thing that we want to do is actually call our new function. So get weapon anims table, plug it in here, and we can get the character row name from the player profile over here. So you want to select it, and then on the right side you can enable the character row name pin and simply plug it into our new function call. So this will return the correct data table. So let's disconnect the out row over here. And this is not actually a weapon info. Well, let's keep it over here for now. So let's clear this, and then we can plug in the variable, plug this one in over here. So for the out row, again, we want to break it as a weapon anim structure. And then we can simply move over the pins. So we have the weapon mesh in here as well. So move that over, and then the character hip idle, plug it in here as well. We can hide all of the other pins, and that should be good to go. There's one thing we need to do in here, and that's enter the actual weapon name. So we are getting the weapon loadout, the first weapon in the loadout, and we can plug that in here. So this should fix this part. We can get off the break weapon info. We don't need that one anymore. And this is done and good to go. And we want to do the similar thing in the update loadout character. So again, we're using the weapon info table and we're using the idle animation and the weapon mesh. So we're going to do the same thing over here. First of all, let's make sure it's not none. So if this is false, we're going to call our new function, getWeaponAnimStable. Plug it in here. Again, we need the character row name. So we simply have the player profile info in our variables. So let's drag it in here and break it. And we can plug in the character row name over here. So that will return the correct data table, and then we can plug that one back in here. So let's disconnect the out row and we can clear it in here, plug in the data table, connect up the execution pin. And again, the out row, we want to break it as a weapon anim structure. So break weapon anims and simply move over the pins. So we have the weapon mesh and the character hip idle. There we go. So we can get rid of the old break, and this should be fixed up as well. So compile and save, and that should be everything we need to do to get our new data table working. Now we can clean up our weapon info structure because there's a lot of variables in there we're not using anymore. So let's make sure that everything is saved, and then we're going to go to the weapons folder and open up our as weapon info. And in here, we do want to keep the weapon mesh because we are using that in some places. So let's just keep it in both of the data tables. And we're going to remove all of the animations in here. So the animation sequences and the montages. So simply get rid of all of that stuff. And also the two blend spaces in here. And then at the end, the melee montage, we can also get rid of that one. So simply all of the animation related stuff, you can remove it. Now let's save the structure. And then we're going to close the project, and we're not going to save all of this stuff. So don't save it and make sure we reopen the project. There we go. So that's the first part done. Let's continue with setting up the crouch, entry, exit, hit reaction and death montages. So if we open up our hero base character, there's actually a few montages left that aren't set up as a variable. So we simply use the play montage node and then enter the montage over here. So we want to make sure that we get rid of those and set them up as a variable so we can add them to a data table. So I'm not going to go through all of them because I already have them listed and you just have to trust me on this. So I'm going to close it down and go to my character info table. So in this case, we can simply add them in here because they are the same for the character. It doesn't matter which weapon it's wielding. So that's why we needed a different data table for the weapons. A character can hold different weapons. So that was kind of an issue. In this case, we can simply add them in here. So let's just do that. So first of all, we need to open the structure. So let's make sure everything is saved again. And then we're going to open up our character info structure. And we're going to add a whole bunch of montages in here. Now all of them are going to be soft object references. So let's add a new variable. And the first one is going to be the pistol equip montage. So pistol equip montage. And then we're going to set it to an animation montage. And make sure we select the soft object reference. Let's add a new variable again, and that's going to be the rifle equip montage. No, equip montage. There we go. And then we also have the death and the hit animations. So let's add 4 new ones for the death animations. That's going to be death front, and then obviously death back, and left and right. And the same thing goes for the hit montages. So again, we need 4 of them, and we got hit front, and then hit back, hit left, and hit right. And there's actually 2 more animations left, or montages, and those are the crouch entry and crouch exit montage. So crouch entry, and then the last one is the crouch exit. So with all of those set up, let me double check. Yeah, that should be all of them. So we have our structure completed. So let's save this one and then close it down. So again, we're going to close the entire project and don't save all of the other references, and simply reopen the project again. There we go. Now let's open up our character info table, and in here we also need to add a row for Eli. So let's add a new row and simply give that a new name, and that's going to be Eli, or whatever your new character is called. And we can also set up the health and the strength and stamina in here. So let's just plug in some variables in here, doesn't really matter. And we also want to set up all of the montages in here, but I don't think we actually retargeted them for Eli, because those aren't in the animation blueprint. So we need to retarget those manually. So first of all, let's set up our Quinn row. So for the pistol equip, we want to look for pistol equip. Oh. So that's only one option, plug it in here, and the rifle should be the same. So look for rifle equip and plug it in here. Then for the dead front, so we can simply look for dead front, and I'm gonna use all of the 1 animations. So dead front 1, and then look for dead back. So there's only 1 in here, so let's grab that one, and then we have dead left. So there's also only 1, and the last one dead right. Again, number 1. And the same thing goes for the hit reaction. So look for hit front. And in this case, I'm using the LGT01s. So LGT01, select that one, or pick another one if you like, as long as you remember which one you used. And then again, we have hit back. So LGT01, hit left, LGT01, and the last one hit right, plug it in. And the last ones are the crouch entry, so pistol crouch entry and crouch exit. So there's only pistol variations from these ones, so simply select the pistol ones, and we're blending them, so that's good. So we have this row set up for Quinn, and I don't really feel like doing it 3 more times, so I'm simply gonna delete these rows and then duplicate the Quinn row 3 times and rename it back. So Quinn green, and then Quinn gray, and Quinn red. So now all of them have the same health and stamina and strength, so we might just want to make a little bit of changes in here. It doesn't really matter, to be honest, but do whatever you prefer. There we go. So for organization's sake, I'm gonna get rid of Eli and add it to the bottom. So rename it again, we have Eli, and make sure Eli actually has some health and some stamina and stuff like that. So now let's retarget these animations. So let's select a Quinn row and let's dock this over here. So I'm simply going to browse to the asset and then select it. So we have pistol equip and rifle equip. I think we can grab both of those at once. So rifle equip, pistol equip, right click, go to retarget animation assets, duplicate and retarget. Make sure we select our Eli retargeter. And I'm going to give it my Eli prefix. So for now, I'm just going to store them in root and then move them all together. So we have the pistol and rifle equip. Then let's go to the dead front. So we have that front 1, and then over here should be, oh, that back, it's right before the other one. So select that front one, that back one, and then that left one and that right one. So with all of those 4 selected, retarget animation assets, select the retargeter, add your prefix if you like, and retarget them. So the same thing goes for the hit animations. So we have the hit front LGT, hit back LGT, and then we have a hit left LGT and hit right LGT. So with all 4 of those selected, again, retarget. Make sure you select your correct retargeter, and that's good to go. So the last ones are the crouch entry and exit. So if we, well, crouch entry, so they're actually next to each other, obviously. So we can select both of them and then retarget those as well. There we go. So let's save all of this stuff and move it into the correct folder. So that's my Eli animations folder. And we actually have a duplicate animation. So this is one that's been used in an additive animation, and that's why it retargeted it twice. So I'm just gonna put a 1 behind there and move it over as well. No biggie, okay. So now we can go back to the data table and actually plug them in here. So let's look for the pistol equip and make sure that we actually use Eli's. And then also use rifle equip, and again select Eli's, and then for all of the death ones as well. So this is death front, and then we have Eli death, and this is back. The next one is left, and the last one is right. Then are the hit montages, so Eli hit, and we have the front one over here, Eli hit, and the back is the next one, Eli hit, and then we have left, and the last one is right. And then all we need is our crouch entry and exit. So let's look for Eli crouch, no, okay, then we put entry behind there, there we go. And Eli crouch exit. So we have those set up as well. Save the new data table and close it down. So we need to set that stuff up in the character as well. So let's go back to our hero base character. So we can pretty easily set most of, or actually all of these animations in our set model and skin event. So these animations don't change during the game. They belong to the character you chose, and it's not like the set weapon cosmetics. They change when you switch weapon or something. So we can simply go to our set model and skin function that's called all the way at the beginning from begin play. And in here we can grab our new data table and make sure that we set some new variables we can use for the montages. So if we have the event over here, get table row, and then we have the first async load asset. So from this upper pin, I'm simply going to drag off and continue on the side over here. So we want to get a new table row. So let's look for that first, get table row. And we do actually need a bit of room in here. So that's not too hard. Let's move this over. There we go. So we have a bit of space to work with. So we need the correct data table, and that's the character info table. So we can simply select it over here. Now we need the character row name, and that should actually be inside of our variable somewhere. So if you look for it over here, character row name, and we can simply plug it in. So let's break the out structure, and we need to set all of these montages as a variable. So we can skip the health, strength, and stamina. We already have those set up. So let's start with the pistol equip, drag off here, async load asset. So we did this a couple of times now, so this should be familiar. We're gonna drag off the object and need to cast it to an animation montage. So I'm gonna grab myself a pure cast, and then we want to promote it to a variable. So this is the pistol equip montage. And make sure we connect this to the completed pin, and we can duplicate this stuff and connect this up to the upper pin. So the next one is the rifle equip montage. So again, promote to variable and rifle equip montage. There we go. So that's connected to completed, and this is good to go. Now for the for the death and the hit montages, I'm gonna create an array and then simply kind of hard code the numbers. So I'm simply gonna say 0 is front, 1 is back, 2 is left, and 3 is right. There's no real logic behind that. It's just something you know and you need to set up. So I'm gonna grab the weapon montage, duplicate it, and these are going to be the death montages. Nope. So we want to turn this into an array, and then we can grab a few of the async load nodes. So we do need 4 of them over here. So this goes to the upper pin of the previous one. Make sure you plug in all of the death animations. And then we can grab our death montages array, and we can simply set an array element. So plug this in over here. The item is going to be the return from the cast, and then I'm gonna put the front one at index 0. So let's copy and paste the setter and make sure you connect everything up. So for the second one, I'm gonna put it at index 1, and that's the back animation. And then we need 2 more of the set array element nodes. Make sure you connect everything up. So the target array is the death montages array. And then for the left one, I'm gonna use index 2. And for the right one, I'm gonna use index 3. Make sure you connect the asset pin as well. And you do want to make sure you enable size to fit over here, otherwise it won't work. So this should be connected as well. This should simply be a chain connected to each other. So this is the death montages array, and I'm gonna do the same thing for the hit montages. So again, we need an array for that. So I'm gonna call this hit montages. So I kind of misspelled that, but whatever, that happens a lot. So we need 4 of the async load nodes, paste them over here. And we need 4 set array element nodes. So I could have just grabbed them immediately. Okay. Paste them over here as well. Make sure you hook these up to the completed pin. And then we're going to grab our hit montages array and plug it into the target arrays. So the index should be set up if you copy them. So simply 0, 1, 2, 3 for front, back, left, right. And make sure you plug in the actual assets as well. So that's good to go. We need to connect up the async load nodes and actually plug in the correct soft references. So the first one is hit front, hit back, hit left, and hit right. And then we're left with the 2 crouching montages. So let's grab 2 more async load asset nodes. And we're going to plug these in over here. So let's crouch entry and crouch exit. Connect them up to the previous ones. And promote this to a variable. So this is my crouch entry montage. And the next one is my crouch exit montage. So again, promote to variable, crouch exit montage. So we have all of that stuff set up as well. And now we need to make sure we actually use our new variables. So let's quickly scan over this to make sure all of the pins are connected. And that should be good, I think. So let's move this back up here. There we go. So first of all, let's take a look at the get hit montage. So that should be over here, get hit react montage. Let's open up this function. So we simply want to drag in our hit montages array. And then we can get the correct entry from here. So simply get a copy and make sure you fill in the correct index that belongs to the correct direction. So I used index 0 for back and then index 1 for front. Index 2 for left. And index 3 for the right one. And connect it up like this. So now we need to do the same thing for the det montages. So we have a similar function for that. So let's open that one up as well. Get det montage. And that should be over here. So as you can see, that's exactly the same. So we can simply copy these 4 setters. And make sure that we grab our det montages array instead of the hit montage array. So let's make sure this is connected. And then we're going to grab our det montages array and plug them into the getters. So again, index 0 back, index 1 front, 2 left, and 3 is right. So that should work as well. So those are set up and good to go. Then we have the crouch, entry, and exit. So we need to make sure that we change those as well. I'm quickly scanning through my notes. Yeah, so we want to go back to the event graph. And if we look for start crouch, we should have an event called start crouch. And if we go there, we should be pretty close. So in here we have the play montage nodes, and as you can see, we are simply plugging in a montage over here. So we want to replace it with the crouch entry montage variable. And then if we scroll down a little, we have stop crouch with the same setup. So in here we need to plug in our crouch exit montage. Those are good to go. So we did these ones now. All we need to do is the pistol equip and the rifle equip. So we want to look for the switch weapon events. So if I look for switch weapon, that's actually the name of the event. So that's cool. And in here we are using a variable, but we want to make sure that we plug in the correct montage for each variable. So the upper one is the pistol equip in my case. So that's connected to the true pin. So for this one, we want to grab our pistol equip montage and plug it in here. And the other one is automatically going to be the rifle montage. So that's connected like this. Compile and save. So that should take care of all of the loose animations that were still left inside of the hero base character. So we're getting kind of close to getting this to work, although there is still quite a lot of work to do as well. Let's take a quick look at the animation blueprint to make sure that our anim slots and graph nodes are actually up to date. And then we might want to take a look at our weapon setup. So let's open up the animation blueprint, and I'm also going to open up Quinn's one so we have a reference. So I'm going to put that to the side and then also open up Eli's one. There we go. So you want the animation slot manager over here on the right side. So if you don't see it, you can simply go to window over here and then select the animation slot manager in here and the window will pop up. So we retargeted the animations, and as you can see, it actually did create new slots for us, but it didn't create groups. So if we look Quinn animation blueprint, we actually use an additive group and an attack group. And we want to make sure that we also add those groups to the new Eli character. So we have the additive group for the additive hit react, and we have the attack group for the upper body attack. So let's create those two new groups, additive group and attack. So we're going to go back to Eli, and then we can add a group. So that's the additive group. I'm not even sure. I think so. Additive group, I probably fucked that up, but okay. And then the second one is add group, and we're gonna call that attack. So the upper body attack slot, you want to right click it, and then you can move it to the group, and over here you can select the attack group. Now let's double check the other one. Oh, it was correct. Additive group, so that needs the additive hit react. So we have upper body attack slot and then additive hit react. So this one is correct. Upper body attack goes under attack, and then additive hit react, right click and move that to the additive group. So now we have the slots and the groups set up correctly, but if we go to the event graph over here, and I'm not really sure if this actually matters or if it's just visual, but as you can see for the additive hit react, it still says default group. So I'm simply going to select the node over here and then make sure that we switch it to something else and then select the correct one. And now it actually says additive group, additive hit react. So for the attack, you want to do the same thing. So let's just move it over to something else and then put it back. So now it's at the correct group. And the other slot nodes should be fine. So we had the upper body over here, default slot, and the full body at the end. So we can just leave those alone and that should work. So those are the animation slots. And now we want to take a look at our weapon setup. So for our weapon bone, if we go to the Eli folder, and I actually spent a whole load of time trying to get this to work straight from the retargeter. I'm sure there is an option for it, but I couldn't find it. So the problem is inside here for the chain mapping and stuff, you have a bunch of different options, globally scaled, absolute, all of that stuff. And if you go into the actual character mesh, you can enable retargeting options, and in here there are actually also options you can set for each bone. So I've been playing around with all of these options, and I think I tried every possible combination, but I probably forgot one, and that's probably the winning one. But I couldn't get it to retarget the actual absolute location of the weapon bone. So we're gonna need to make sure that we make a few small changes to it using a socket. So we're gonna go to our skeletal mesh, and in here we want to go to our weapon R bone. We're gonna right click and we're gonna add a socket. So I'm just gonna call it weapon R socket, that's fine. Now I'm gonna go to the preview scene settings, and for the preview controller I want to use a specific animation, and then I'm gonna just search for the pistol ADS one. So pistol idle ADS, then I'm going to pause the animation so it doesn't move around, and I want to add the weapon to the socket. So I'm going to select the socket over here, right click, add preview asset, and then look for the pistol. So that's SK pistol, attach it, and as you can see it's quite off. So, and there are options you can set to get it really close, but it's still not actually what it should be, so there's no point in spending all the time getting it to not work. So we can simply rotate it and move it around a little bit to make sure it's in the correct position. So I'm just going to do that roughly right now, and we can make a few adjustments later if we need to. So you especially want to make sure it's kind of angled in the same direction as the character, so that looks a little bit better. So let's move it around a little bit as well. There we go, something like this. That looks pretty close to me. So for now, I'm simply going to use this, and if it really doesn't look like it should, we can always go back and make a few adjustments later. So that's the actual weapon socket for the weapon in game. And as you might remember, we also have holster sockets on our character, so we can holster weapons on our back. So we want to make sure that we also add those. And since we're already in here, let's just do that right away. So I'm grabbing my example, and we need to add the holster socket 1 and 2 to the highest spine bone that we have. So for Quinn, oh freak. So it's having some difficulties loading, I guess. Hello? Oh, come on. You're not gonna do this to me again, are you? Okay, let's just try and continue. I may have to reload the project. I'm not sure what's happening, but so we want to select the spine 03 bone, and in here we're going to right click and then add a socket. So the first one is going to be a holster socket _2. And then we simply want to add a preview mesh to this. So we can align it to the back of the character. So SK rifle, for example. Oh, come on. What's happening, man? Yeah, are we back? Thank you. Awesome. So now we want to make sure that we align it to the back of the character. So I'm just going to do it quickly, and you can spend more time on it if it's actually the character you're going to use in game. So let's rotate it 90 degrees. Make it a little bit more straight, and then move it up a little bit. So something like that should do fine for now. Oh, really? So let me rotate it a little bit. That's a little bit better probably. And move it back. There we go. So that's holster socket 2. And then we also want to add holster socket 1. So again, select spine 03, right click, add socket. And this time rename it to holster socket _1. So this is simply for weapon slot 1, this is for weapon slot 2, and then we have weapon slot 0, which is the pistol, and we're going to add that to the thigh later. So holster socket 1, right click, add a preview asset, and this time I'm going to add the SKM shotgun. It doesn't really matter because it's just a preview. And again, we want to make sure that we align it correctly. So I'm not sure why the grid snapping is not working. Oh, really? So rotate it 90 degrees. Make sure it's a little bit straighter. And move it in position. So something like this possibly. So that's holster socket 1 and 2. And then we want to add the holster socket 0 to our thigh left bone. So I'm going to grab thigh left. Again, right click, add a new socket. Rename this one to holster socket _1. And we could add our pistol in here. So add a preview asset, SK pistol. Oh, freaking. What's it doing, man? So SK pistol. Oh, come on. What the actual... I want to type in here, you know, where the actual thingy is blinking. Thank you. Nice. Oh, SK pistol. Okay, and we want to align that over here again. So let's rotate it a little bit. And the other way around. So let's just stick it to the hip over here. And maybe rotate it a little bit. There we go. So that should be good as far as I'm concerned. So we have our sockets in here set up. So for now, I'm just going to remove all of the preview assets. So right click, remove all attached assets, and everything is back as it should be. Save this, close it down, and you also want to save the skeleton. So let's save all and make sure this is saved. Now we want to go to our hero base character. And in here we are going to run into, well, not really a problem, but something we need to adjust, because right now if we select our weapon mesh, we have the parent socket over here set up to be weapon R. So we're simply going to remove the parent socket in our BP hero base, compile it, save it, and then we want to close it down, and we're going to open up all of our child blueprints again. And then in the construction script, we're going to attach the meshes by hand. So let's make a little bit of room over here. And I'm going to drag in my weapon mesh. And from here, I want to look for attach component to component. Plug that in over here. So the target is the weapon mesh. The parent is going to be the mesh. So that's the character mesh. And then this is Quinn. So for Quinn, we want to attach the weapon to our weapon underscore R bone. So that's where it was previously. And for the location rule, you actually want to, location should be snap to target, and rotation you want to keep relative. So this should work. Then we can connect this back up and copy this stuff, because we can do the same thing for all 4 of our quins. So if we go to the viewport and hit compile after adding the node, the gun should pop back into position, and if it does, you did it correctly. So let's do the same thing for Quinn Gray. Connect it back up and compile it. Then we have Quinn Green. Compile, and that should be good to go. And the last one is Quinn Blue. So attach component to component. And then compile, and the gun should be attached. That's good. So for Eli, we want to do the same thing. So let's go over here. Attach component to component. But in this case, we want to attach it to weapon R socket. So just type socket behind it. And then for the location rule, let me double check. So if we compile it like this, so it's actually rotated 90 degrees, and we want to fix that. So if we use snap to target, it's not going to work, because the rotation of the socket, it might actually work, to be honest. Let me, well, we're just going to keep it like this, and if we need to change it, we can always go back in here. So I wanted to add a set relative location, but I don't think we actually need it. So let's just keep it like this. So we have the weapon attachment set up in the construction script. Now we want to make sure that we also attach our grenade location in here as well. So since we already have all of this stuff open, let's do that. So what do I mean by that? If we go to the viewport, we have our grenade location scene component. And if you look, so this is Eli, and you will see it's over on the ground. And if we go to Quinn Blue and select it, it's actually up here. So it's attached to parent socket spine 05, and Eli only has 3 spine bones. So we need to make sure for Eli we attach it to spine 03. So what we want to do is make sure that we get rid of the parent socket inside of our hero base character. So let me just save everything. So let's open up the hero base character, select the grenade location and remove the parent socket. That's gone. Compile and save. And again, we want to open up all of our child blueprints. And in the construction script, we can simply attach our grenade location to the mesh again. So let's grab attach component to component with the mesh node. So this time the target is our grenade location. And then for the Quinn characters, we want to attach it to spine underscore 05, and then simply use snap to target for both of them. I'm sorry, we want to set it to keep relative, to be honest. So keep relative for rotation and location. So if we look over here, we actually set a location and a rotation, and we want to make sure that we keep this offset to the spine 05 bone. So that's why we're using keep relative. It's going to keep this relative translation to the socket. So we can simply copy and paste this for our Quinn characters. So all 4 of them should be the same. So let's make sure that's compiled and saved as well. There we go, compile, save, and Quinn Blue. Plug it in here and compile, save. So if we go to the viewport right now, and we could select another view, so possibly, no, not front, right, maybe, there we go. So if we select the grenade location, you can see it's at the height of the head, and then pretty much at the point of the gun. So we want to make sure for Eli we place it in a similar location, and our rotation is -90, so we can keep that. So if we go back to Eli and then go to the viewport, so in here we want to set it to right, and then we're going to grab our grenade location and move it roughly into the correct spot. So that should be at the top of the head, right about somewhere. And then at the tip of the gun. So something about this should do. It's not really that important. You can always adjust it later if it looks weird in game. So now that we have this changed, we can go to the ConstructionScript again. And again, we want to paste our attach component to component node. But this time for Eli, we want to attach it to spine 03. Again, keep relative. And then if we compile and select it, we actually messed it up. Let me double check quickly. We didn't really screw anything up. I think we just need to change the location. So if we change this to -64, that's already a bit better, and the 172 is a bit much. So if I look at my example project, I had it at about 35. Let's make it 40. Yeah, something like that should do. And then let me see, in my example project I used 55 minus 50, so let's just keep x55 minus 50. That looks a little bit better. So 55 minus 50, 40, and then rotation 90, and then it should be roughly in the correct position. So go back over here. We have all of this saved and set up, so that's good to go. Now we want to make sure that our weapons, especially the left hand, looks a little bit better. And again, I went through all of the possible options to get the IK bones to retarget properly. I can get the locations to retarget exactly as they should, but the rotation is always off. So that's still causing problems, and I've spent a ton of time trying to fix it, but I just couldn't find the right options. I'm pretty sure there are correct options for it, but I just can't find them. So what we're gonna do is use a FABRIK node to adjust the left-hand location. And to be honest, it gives good results, just as good as the normal IK retargeting that Quinn is using. So if we open up Quinn, for example, okay. So if we launch a solo game, oh, it's really slow. I just don't know. Well, okay, let's just ignore that. So if I grab the rifle in here, for example, And if I look at my aim offset, so if I aim the web, it's not actually switching. What's happening? I did change the name to rifle, didn't I? Let me take a look. So weapon animations, this is AR, pistol, pistol, AR, that should be good. Weapon animations, Quinn, should be good as well. Okay. And if I go in here, I actually did connect everything back up. So let's make sure that it's connected for all 4 of the child blueprints. That should be good. Let me check quickly and I'll be back in a sec. Okay, that was my bad. I did actually forgot to hook up one of the pins inside of the set weapon cosmetics node or event. So in here for the async load assets, I forgot to connect it up here, and that's exactly where the character ADS and hip idle animations are being set. So that's why those didn't update as well. So now they should be better. So let's compile and save and let's have a quick look. If we're actually switching animations right now. So that's better. So what I wanted to say, if you look at the aim offset for twin, if you aim down, the hand is actually also moving out of position. And if you move up, it's also moving a bit out of. So let's start in the animation blueprint for Eli. Let's open that one up. And we're going to go to the animation graph. So in here, I disconnected a bunch of things that gave errors. So we have the control rig over here for the food IK. We're going to get back to that a little bit later. If you are worried about the warnings, just disconnect it like I did and you can work undisturbed. So we're not going to use the copy bone and the 2-bone IK nodes. So let's just get rid of those. And over here, we want to look for a fabric node. So look for fabric node. And that's this node. So we can simply plug it into the component to local nodes and make sure that we connect it back up to the animation graph. So then go to the full body slot and later we're going to plug back our control rack in as well. So for the fabric node itself, we need to do the setup. So for the effector transform, we want to keep it as a pin. Then for the effector target, we can select a bone. And in this case, we're going to select the hand right bone. So this is what's going to be used as a target to line up our left hand. And if you think about it, the weapon is a solid object. It cannot change size, it cannot bend or things like that. So if we know where the right hand is, we automatically also know where the left hand is. So we can use that to make sure everything aligns. So for the effector transform space, we want to set it to bone space. And then for the effector rotation, I'm going to select no change, preserve existing component space rotation. So make sure this is set up correctly. Then for the tip bone, we want to select our hand left. And the root bone is going to be the upper arm left. So those should be the settings for the actual node. And then we want to drag off here for the alpha and we want to promote it to a variable. So that's going to be the fabric alpha. And we want to do the same thing for the effector transform. So drag off here again, promote to variable, and that's our fabric transform. So if we would only use one weapon, we could simply grab, we need to compile it over here. So after we compiled and we select the node, you can actually set the vector transform over here in the viewport as well by simply... Oh, it doesn't allow me to do that because I have it set up as a variable over here and it's automatically going to go back to the 0, 0 values. So if I would disconnect it for now, just to show you how it works, I need to compile it. So then we can actually move it around. And you want to paste this location to your clipboard, for example. So if you want to go to a vector transform and then set it as a dynamic value. Let me see, I'm sorry. So, sorry, okay, so if you do not expose it as a pin, then at the top here you can expand it and you can actually grab the value that you set. So you can right click, copy it, and then open up your notepad, for example, and simply paste it in there. Something like this will pop up, so the rotation will be 0. So you want to make sure for each weapon that you have, you want to grab the correct transform for the fabric node. So this is the one for pistol. We have that saved, and then you want to go to the beginning of the branch over here. So over here we have the character hip idle. Right now it's the pistol idle. So if I would change this to my rifle idle animation, MF rifle idle, so it's giving all the aim offsets. So this one, for example, that's a little bit freaky. What the actual... Oh, I'm sorry, I selected the Quinn animation and this is Eli, so you want to select Eli rifle idle. And then select the actual hipfire one. So now you can go to the Quinn mesh over here, go to the weapon R socket, add a preview asset, SK rifle. Oh, you're gonna do it again. Come on, man. Sometimes this program is so freaking annoying. Okay, there we go. So we added the preview asset. If we go back in here, nothing shows up. So we want to close down the animation blueprint, reopen it. And now our preview asset is in here as well. So we're playing the rifle idle animation. We have the correct asset in here. So now we can go back to our fabric node and simply adjust the location of the hand again. So move it in the correct position. So I'm gonna do this real quick. It's not perfect, but it'll have to do. And then we can right click over here, copy this location as well, and go back to our clipboard. So this was the pistol one, and then we added the rifle one right now. Oh, freaking really. I want to do things too fast. Okay, so you know what this means. So for every weapon that you want to use, you want to grab the correct fabric location to make a long story short. So I already put down the correct locations and they might not be perfect, but I'm just going to use those because this video is going to be way too long. So let's make sure that we set this back up the way it should be. So after you have collected all the correct locations for your weapons, you want to go back to the fabric node. And for the vector transform, you want to expose it as a pin again and plug in the variable. Then go back to the beginning for the character hip idle that we changed. And this is not really too important, by the way, because this is just for the animation that plays here. In game, this will be set dynamically, but for completion's sake, let's just put it back to our pistol hip idle animation. And then everything is back to the way it was before. So compile and save this. So that's a small downside of the fabric node. You will need a separate location for each weapon, and we need to make sure that we add that location to our weapon animations table as well. Excuse me. So let me quickly move over back to my original notes in here. So we're going to add this fabric transform to our Anim instance interface. So let's close down the animation blueprint for now. We're going to go to Framework Interfaces, and we have our BPI Anim instance. So in here we already have a function that we're calling to set the weapon animations on the animation blueprint. So we can simply add a new input to this, and that's going to be the fabric transform. So fabric transform, turn it into a transform, compile and save. Close it back down again. So now we can go back to our animation blueprint. And in the event graph, we already have our interface event. So we can simply grab our fabric transform variable that we just created and plug it in at the end over here. So you could connect it to the last one and then to the upper pin, for example. So that's connected. And now I'm gonna get back to the alpha for the fabric in a little bit, because I want to do a little bit explanation in there as well. So let me see, we have that set up. So we can go to our hero base character. That's characters hero base. And in here we need to get back to our set weapon cosmetics function. So I was already here, set weapon cosmetics. And in here we are actually calling our animation instance interface, or we should actually do that. Why isn't that changed? Didn't I actually change that in the video? I'm starting to get doubts now. Okay, so this animation instance, no, that's a hero Quinn variable. So I'm fairly sure I remember I did this on video. So I'm just gonna do this really quickly. So if I forgot to do it in the last video, we can do it right now. So let's start with the animation instance. You want to look for all of the references to the animation instance. And there are a few in the hero character. So we're starting at event begin play, where we actually set it, and we're casting to our hero Quinn animation blueprint. So we don't want to do that anymore. So we can select the variable over here and simply turn it into an anim instance. So that's the parent class. Change variable type, that's fine. So it's going to search for all of them, thank you. So we can get rid of the cast over here and plug the execution directly into the setter. So in this case, we're just using an anim instance. It's not cast to a specific class of that. Then we can go through all of these nodes and make sure that we replace them with our interface functions. So for the anim instance, we have our play-montage. That's the message function. So you want to connect that one up and get rid of the old call. And this one is good to go. Then for the next one, we have the get move direction. So we also created a function for that on our interface. So drag off the anim instance and then simply type get move direction. So again, use the message function from the interface, plug it in over here and plug the direction back in, get rid of this. And then this is the set weapon cosmetics. So we're going to get back to that one. And then we have can dash. And in here, we're actually getting our is play turn montage. So we also created a function for that. Get is playing turn montage. Again, use the message function, plug it in over here. And then simply replace that with the bool over here. So we can get rid of this. And that's the actual interface implemented. Now for the anim instance it's complaining about, that's the one where we need to call our set weapon anims. So set weapon anims, again that's the message function. And in here we can also plug in the transform. So first of all, let's make sure we grab the correct animation. So we have character ADS idle. So the ADS idle, that's this one. and then the hip idle, so that's this one, ADS aim offset, and the hip aim offset. So those are gone. So we can get rid of these async load assets over. Yes, those are the correct ones. So we can simply delete those. And all we need to do in here is call our function on the interface. So plug this back into the other async loads. And now what we actually came to do here, that was the fabric transform. So we want to add it to our weapon Anims table again. So each character can have a different fabric transform for each weapon as well. So let's compile and save all of this stuff. Save everything, so make sure your entire project is saved. Then we're going to go to the weapons folder and open up our weapon Anims structure. And although this is not an animation, we are going to add it in here. So that's our fabric transform. And turn it into a transform. Save the structure, close it down and close the entire project. Don't save anything else and reopen your project. So this will make sure the struct doesn't get corrupted and you can still use the project later and actually compile it. So this is pretty important. If you make changes to a structure, always do it like this. So that's good to go. Now we can go inside of our weapon animations for Eli, and in here we can actually set up the fabric transform. So the rotation is 0, the scale is 1, and all we need to do is grab the location. So I've already grabbed my locations when I was trying this with my example project, so they might not actually be the correct ones. But I'm simply going to try and use these, so it will be a little bit faster for me. So I'm going to copy and paste them in here. So for the pistol, I have a location of minus 8.29 and then minus 4.34 and 3.28. Then for the AR, I'm going to grab the location, copy it over here and paste it over here. So AR, I got minus 2.53, then minus 29.38, and then 7.82. So again, you probably can't use these exact transforms. You might use these as a start point and make small adjustments, or get the actual transform the way I showed you. So the last one for the shotgun, let me grab that one as well, copy and paste. So I got minus 0.98, then minus 32.68, and then 6.42. So you could start with these transforms. You will probably be pretty close if you use the same character, that is. And otherwise just grab them from the animation blueprint the way I showed you. So we have these in place. For Quinn, we don't really need to enter them because Quinn is just going to use the hand IK that already was set up. Remember, that's a different animation blueprint, so there's not even a fabric node inside of the Quinn's one. So we can simply ignore that one. So we can go back to our hero base set weapon cosmetics functions, and right now we can grab the fabric transform from the data table and plug it into the interface. So this will make sure every time we switch weapons, we actually transfer the correct fabric transform to our animation blueprint. So that's done as well. Let me quickly check what's next up. So next up is the fabric alpha. So if we go to our animation blueprint, let me show you. So as I mentioned, the fabric node simply positions the left hand relative to the right hand, because that's how we set it up. So essentially the left hand is tied to the right hand location, and this gives pretty good results, but it will cause a problem if we want to reload the weapon, for example, because then the left hand needs to be able to move around freely and the fabric node is going to keep it in place. So we need to make sure that for some of the montages that we are using, we are actually lowering the alpha. And why do I say some? Well, for a bunch of them, we actually use our full body slot. And the full body slot is after the fabric node. So this will simply override anything that's been done before here and simply play the montage that's in this slot. So the fabric node doesn't affect anything after this if we are playing the actual montage. So it does affect the control rig and stuff like that. But the slot will override everything in front of it. So pretty much all we need to take a look at are the rifle and pistol equip montages, the reload montages, grenade throwing and melee. And for those ones, we need to lower the alpha when we want the left hand to be able to move freely. So there's actually a, well, I'm not going to say super easy, but it's relatively simple and a clean way to set this up. But first we need the actual variable to be populated. So the fabric alpha. So we're going to go to the event graph. And, oh, freaking. Thank you. So what we can do over here, for example, in event blueprint update animation, we're going to use a curve on the montage to set a float, and that float will determine the actual alpha of the fabric. So now by default we want the fabric alpha to be 1 because then it's active, and if it's 0 it's not active and the hand can move freely. So to prevent, we have to go through all animations and set the defaults as 1. We are simply going to grab a setter for the fabric alpha, make sure we connect it in here. And instead of setting it directly, we're going to grab a subtract node. So let's do subtract, disconnect it from here. So the outcome goes in the fabric alpha and we want to put 1 in the upper pin. So we're going to grab 1, subtract the value that we're going to get from our curve in the montage, and then that's going to be our fabric alpha. So we can right click in an empty spot and then look for get curve value. The value. So get curve value, simply that one. Plug it in here. So this means if we use the curve on the montage and we set it to 1 on the montage, we will get 1 minus 1, which is 0. So then the hand can move freely. For the curve name, we're going to use a name that's actually inside of most of the montages by default from the library project. So I'm going to call this my disable L and IK. So disable and then capital L, capital hand, capital IK. So that's the name of the curve you want to use, and then set it up with the 1 minus node like I did over here. Compile and save it. So then what we need to do is go to our animation folder, and for example I'm going to look for the pistol equip. So for this you want to make sure that you use the actual montage. In most cases you can add it to the animation sequence, but in some cases, because they are additive animations, those will cause weird results. So I've noticed the most reliable option is just to add it to the animation montage. You can open the sequence to make sure there's not already a curve in here. So there's not, so that's fine. So let's close the sequence down again and open the pistol equip montage. So we're going to go to curves over here, click the little drop down, select add curve, and then I'm going to select the disable left hand IK curve. So if it's not in there for you for some reason, you can simply create a new curve and give it a name, that's fine. As long as you use the same name over here as you did in the animation blueprint for the get curve value node. So disable left hand IK, let's add this curve. Then click it again and we want to edit the curve. So now all I'm going to do is look for the position where the left hand is away from the weapon. So as you can see for this animation, it's already from the start of the animation. So what we want to do is move the slider to the start of the animation. I'm going to hit enter, and that will add a keyframe over here, this little triangle. So we can select it and then make sure that it's at time 0, and then I'm going to set the value to 1. So that means it will disconnect the left hand because we added the subtract node, so 1 minus 1 is 0. So now the alpha for our fabric node is 0 and the hand can move freely. So then we want to adjust the slider to the point where it's actually going back to the gun. So that's somewhere around here. And you want to be a little bit before the actual end of the animation where the hand is in place. So I'm going to do it right about here. Hit enter again to add another keyframe. Then move it a little bit further to the left where the hand is in the actual end position. Again, add another keyframe, and for this last keyframe, we're going to set the value back to 0, so it actually goes back down, and now 1 minus 0 is 1, so our left hand FABRIK IK is active again. So we want to save this and close it down, and then do the same thing for the rifle equip, and for melee animations, and for the grenade throwing, and all of our reload animations. So that looks like a whole bunch, and there are a few I can't ignore, or I can't disagree with that, but it's not really that much work. So again, open up the montage. We're going to go to curves, add a new curve, disable left hand IK, click the drop down, edit curve. So look for the position where the left hand leaves the weapon. So again, this is pretty much at the start of the animation. So I'm just going to do it from the beginning, hit enter. If it doesn't place the keyframe, if you hit enter, you just want to drag the graph around to make sure you are focused on the graph. Hit enter again and the keyframe will pop up. So this is at time 0. I want to set the value to 1. I'm going to move the slider to the point where the hand is nearing the original position again. So it's getting close over here somewhere. So I'm going to put it somewhere like here. Add another keyframe. Make sure this keyframe is still 1. Then move down a little bit further to where the animation actually settles and everything is back into place. Hit enter again. And for this keyframe, we're going to set it back to 0. So this is our curve. So that's done again. Close it. And that's good to go. Make sure in the original animation there is no curve, otherwise those curves will be added together, or the curve values. So make sure the original animation sequence is clean and you only add it in the montage. So let's do reloading, not reload equip, just reload. So the pistol reload, there's no curve in the original sequence, so we're going to open up the montage. We're going to go to curves, add a curve. Disable left hand IK, edit the curve. So again, the hand is moving from the weapon relatively quickly, but we could start at 0 over here. So let's add a keyframe in here. Then move it to the side a little bit. So somewhere here probably. Add another keyframe. I'm going to put this one to 1. So this is where the hand will be released from the weapon, and then move back to the end of the animation where it goes back into the position. So somewhere around here. Hit enter, make sure this is still at 1 value, and then move to the near end of the animation where everything settles. Hit enter again and make sure we are going back to 0. Compile and save, or not compile, just save. And then we have the rifle reload. So for this one, we have a disable hand IK curve in here, but it's actually way too small for the way that we are using it. So we're simply going to remove the curve from here. And then open up the montage and add our own one. So add curve, disable left hand IK. Click the drop down to edit the curve. So again, the hand is leaving the weapon immediately. So I'm just going to add a keyframe at the beginning and put that to 1. And then look for the point where the hand goes back to the original position. So that's somewhere around here. So something like this you do. Hit enter again, make sure this is still at 1, move it back a little bit further, and then we're gonna set it to 0. And I actually missed the keyframe, so that's nice. So this should be over here somewhere. Hit it and make sure this is still at value 1. So for this part the hand will be disconnected, and over here the IK will kick in again and it will move the hand to the position. So that's done and good to go. The last one is the shotgun reload. So in the actual sequence is no curve, so that's good. Let's open up the montage. We're gonna add a curve in here. Disable left hand IK, make sure we edit the curve. So again, the hand is leaving the weapon immediately, so I'm just gonna start at frame 0, add a keyframe in here and put the value at 1. Then scroll down the animation to the point where the hand goes back to the original position, somewhere around here. Add the keyframe, make sure this is still at 1, and then move it a little bit further to the point where everything settles. Add another keyframe and put this one at 0. Okay, so that's good as well. So we did reloading and equipping, so we have the grenade throw animation. And that's actually an additive animation, so that's a little bit nasty because we do want to add it to the montage. So for this one, as you can see at the beginning, it's already disconnected the hand, so we want to start with value 1. And then I'm going to scroll down and over here. So let's say at frame 28. No, that's a little bit late probably. So from frame 25, I'm gonna slowly get the alpha back in here. So we want to open up the grenade toss additive montage. And as you can see, oh, come on, Unreal, why are you doing this to me? Thank you. So as you can see, because it's additive, it looks really weird, but we know we want frame 25, so there's no biggie. So let's go to curves, add a new curve, disable left hand IK, edit the curve. So for the first one, let's put a keyframe at 1 or at frame 0 and put it at value 1. Then move to frame 25, add another keyframe, make sure this is still at value 1, and then scroll a little bit further, add the last keyframe in here and set that one back to 0. So this will smooth back in the IK. Okay, so that's the grenade toss one, and now we only have melee left. So let's look for the melee montages. And we are kind of presented with the same problem in here. So these are additive ones. So we're simply going to look at the animation sequence and determine where we want to get the hand IK back in. So this goes off pretty much from the beginning. So we're simply going to start at 1 and then we're going to move it back into the original place from somewhere over here. So let's say frame 29. So we want to open the additive montage, then add a curve again, disable left hand IK. We're going to edit the curve. So on the beginning, I'm going to set it to 1. So let's add the keyframe at frame 0 and put the value 1 in here. And then for frame 29, add another keyframe, make sure this is still value 1. Scroll down a little bit further, add the third keyframe and set the value back to 0. There we go. So we only have 2 left, so that's the rifle melee additive. Again, there's no curve in the original one, so that's good. Now this doesn't really need to disconnect the hand if you look at it. So it's really pretty close to what it should be. So we're just going to keep it. We don't need to disconnect the left hand in here. And the last one is the shotgun additive animation. And well, I think we don't really need to disconnect it, to be honest. So you could disconnect it over here a little bit where it releases the barrel of the weapon and it actually slams the person. I don't think you're actually going to notice in game. So you could add a curve in here as well if you want. I'm not going to do it for now. So we have all of the curves in place, and we also added it to the animation blueprint, so that part should work. Now, while doing this, you might have noticed the rifle isn't actually positioned really good, so you might want to go back to the skeletal mesh for Eli. So you can attach the SK rifle and make some adjustments to the weapon R socket with the actual rifle in place, because that will also involve the left hand, so that's a little bit more specific. So use a specific animation, look for Eli rifle idle, and I'm gonna grab the idle hipfire for example. So as you can see, we need to rotate the weapon a bunch, or no, I'm sorry, we don't want to rotate the weapon. So you want to make this look good in game, so the angle of the weapon, and then using the fabric node you can move the left hand into the correct position. So for now we're going to keep this as a starting position, and this should be pretty good. So we have all of this stuff saved and good to go. Now there's really only the foot IK left, so I think we're also going to do that in today's video, and then we can actually wrap it up. So it's a really long video, I know. You probably want to cut it into 2 or 3 pieces if you're watching this and take a little break in between. But there's no point in stopping it right now and have a next episode that only lasts 10 minutes. So we're just gonna finish everything up today. So as I mentioned, we want to set up the foot IK. And if we go to our characters folder, then in here we have the mannequins folder that's imported from our Lyra starter game. So not mannequin over here, but the plural. And in here in the rigs folder, we have the mannequin basic foot IK. If you actually renamed all of the bones in Blender as I did in the beginning, so they match the names of the mannequin in Unreal, we can pretty easily use this foot IK. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to call this CR Eli foot IK, and open it up. Now you don't see anything in here, but that's really easy to fix. So we can simply go to the preview mesh and select Eli, but you will see it's nearly good, but the rotation of the foot bones is off, and that's because our IK foot bones aren't rotated properly as well. But we can actually fix this pretty easily. But before we do that, we want to make sure that we update the hierarchy. So if we keep this hierarchy and then connect the foot IK back in the Anim blueprint, we will get warnings about the hierarchy not matching the hierarchy in here. So what we want to do is go to the rig hierarchy tab, and if you don't have it, simple go to window and select rig hierarchy. So click in here and select Ctrl A to select all of them, and you want to delete them. Simply get rid of all of them. So as you can see, here's a little pile of goo right now. And right now you can import a new hierarchy, and you simply want to import hero Eli, click OK, and boom, there it is. This is good to go. And now all of the warnings will be gone in the animation blueprint as well. Now, if you look at the graph over here, you will see this red named nodes. And if you try to change them, it might or might not work. So if the dropdown doesn't appear, you simply want to close down the rig and reopen it because you changed the hierarchy. Now this is using a capital L, and our bone is using a normal L, so IK foot L over here. And because Unreal doesn't use case sensitive names, I can change this to the correct one and then compile and save it. But if I reopen it, nothing changed because it doesn't notice the difference between a capital. So if you want to get rid of the red names, it doesn't really matter because it works like this also, but you can change it to the right bone first, so IK foot right, and change the right one to left, and then compile and save, and then change everything back. So IK foot left, and this was IK foot right. So if you want to get rid of the red names in here, that's a way to do it. So for this one, let's do it as well. This was left, so I'm turning it into right, and this was right, and I'm turning it into left. And do the same thing over here. So swap sides, foot left, then compile, save, and swap everything back. So IK foot left, IK foot right, and then over here IK foot left and IK foot right. So that's good to go. Let's compile and save it. And we want to go back to the animation folder, to the animation blueprint, into the anim graph. So over here we have the control rig node. Let's hook it back up. And we want to select the node and make sure that we change it to our Eli basic foot IK. So select that over here. And now if we compile and save, you will see the warnings are gone. The only thing we need to do is fix the rotation of the IK bones, and that's really pretty simple. So what we can do for that is simply grab a copy bone node. So we're going to look for copy bone, plug it in over here right before the control rig node. So we want to copy the translation and the rotation, and then for the source bone we're going to select our foot left bone, and the target bone is going to be IK foot left. Control space is component space, that's fine. So all of the other stuff should be good. Then we want to copy and paste this node and do the same thing for the right foot. So this time source bone is foot right and the target bone is IK foot right. So now we can plug this back in over here, and this will make sure that our IK bones match up with our foot bones, and because they will do that, our control rig will work. So compile it, and boom, there you have it, working foot IK. So if you didn't actually rename the bones in Blender, you could probably go into the foot IK rig. And this looks really overwhelming, but to be honest, all of these blue nodes are simply variables. So the getters and setters look differently inside the IK rig, but these are just getters and setters. This is just a branch. So really the only special thing in here is this function, which you can pretty much copy and grab your own bone names if you would like to. So you could reverse engineer this relatively easy and use your own bone names if you didn't actually change stuff in Blender. But we did, or at least I did, so this should work. And I think we are pretty much good to go. So the only thing we need to do is go back to our character menu widget, and in here make sure we can select Eli. So let's go to widgets, character menu. We want to add a button for Eli, so I'm simply going to grab my button character red, duplicate it, and call this button character Eli. So let's change the text on the button as well, so that's going to be Eli. Then we want to go to the graph, and we need to go to the event graph. So at the beginning event construct, we're adding a mapping for the buttons, so we want to add one for Eli as well, so we can copy the button map variable with the add node. We want to type in Eli over here and then grab our button Eli and plug it in over here. So this will connect it to the button mapping, and then we need to add an onClicked event. So select your button character Eli, and for Eli, and for onClicked, click the little plus sign to add an onClicked event. Then if you go to the onClicked events for the blue, green, gray and red character, we can simply grab this node, paste it over here. So the character row name is going to be Eli, and for the character class we want to select BP Hero Eli. Compile and save, and that should make our character selectable from the menu as well. Save everything. So this is the point where you want to do a little prayer and cross your fingers, because right now we should be able to test this and most of it should work. So let's just give it a go and see what happens. I'm gonna run a solo game first and select my character. So at least it pops up over here, that's good. And there we have our Eli character. So from my character, you can see I have a little bit of stretched arms over here. That's because I used the globally scaled setting for the arms. You do notice it with the idle animation like this, for example. It's hard to notice when he's actually holding a weapon. And it does make the weapon animations look a little bit better as far as I'm concerned, but that's really up to you if you want to do it or not. You could also just grab this animation, disable globally scaled for this one when you retarget it, and enable it for all the weapon animations, so you don't need to use the same settings for all animations. You can mix and match whatever you like. So we have Eli in here. I'm gonna set it to free for all, and let's hit start game and see what happens. So that's not too bad. He's actually in game and he's moving. So our turn in place animations are working as well. Let's see if we can dash. Oh, that was a little bit of a hiccup, but we can actually dash. So that's working as well in all 4 directions. We should be able to crouch and uncrouch. And as you can see, when we are crouching, the foot IK is also working. So by default, if we use the crouch animations, you will end up with your feet in the ground. And you can also confirm on the stairs over here that we actually have working foot IK, as you can see over here. So that's working as well. So most of the animation stuff seems to be good. We can melee and all kinds of stuff. Throwing grenades should not be a problem either. There we go, so that's working as well. ADS is working, shooting is working. And as you can see, the fabric node does its work pretty good. So the hand stays in position pretty much all the time, and it does work. So if we pick up the rifle, let's make sure that's working as well. So we have the pistol holstered to our thigh, as you can see. So we do want to change the rotation a little bit to the left because this looks a little bit weird. So we can make adjustments to the weapon R socket to change the position of our weapon. So what I would recommend is first line up the weapon in a way that you are satisfied, and when the weapon is aligned, make sure that you then go in and adjust the location of the fabric node. So this is working, and if I switch weapons, my holster socket is working as well. And if I pick up another weapon, that's good to go. So there is actually a bug with the holster sockets. I'm not gonna fix that in this video because people that aren't following the retargeting tutorial might still follow the multiplayer tutorial, so I do want to fix it in an official multiplayer video, but I am aware of the bug with the holstered weapons. So if I switch weapons right now, it will probably start overlapping each other, as you can see. So there's a bug we need to fix, but again, that's for another series. So for now, I think we are pretty much good to go, and we have our working Mixamo character in game. As I said, you can go in and adjust the weapon R bone to make things look a little bit better, but it's really not that bad for a first try, in my opinion. I don't think I actually forgot something, and it actually went pretty smooth today, so I'm kind of surprised. This was a long video to record, but I wanted to get it out of the way. Again, splitting it up or 2 or 3 videos, that wasn't really what I wanted to do. So hope you enjoy it. I hope it isn't too much because we're probably going somewhere near 1.5 to 2 hours, but it just needed to happen. So hope you enjoyed it, hope everything is working for you, and if you did enjoy it, please consider leaving a like. I've spent quite a bit of time getting everything to work, and I'll see you soon for the next videos. We're going back to the multiplayer project and make some fixes in there soon. Thanks for watching everybody, talk to you later, bye bye.